The alarm screamed through the underground command center like a wounded animal. Lieutenant Colonel Jake Morrison ran his fingers through his gray hair as he stared at the impossible readings on his screen. 40 years of military service had taught him to stay calm under pressure, but this was different. This was beyond anything he had ever seen. "Sir, you need to look at this," Sergeant Linda Hayes called from her station. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the fear underneath. "The deep space sensors are picking up massive energy signatures near Neptune." Jake walked over to her console and looked at the data. The numbers made no sense. 300 objects, each one larger than the biggest aircraft carrier ever built, had appeared out of nowhere. They were not moving fast, but they were moving with purpose, straight toward Earth. "Run the scan again," Jake ordered. "Check for system errors." "Already did that, sir. 3 times. The readings are correct." Jake picked up the red phone that connected him directly to the Pentagon. The line was answered before the first ring finished. "This is General Crawford," came the voice on the other end. "General, this is Morrison at NORAD. We have a problem. A big one." 20 minutes later, President Amy Sullivan sat in the Situation room beneath the White House. The room was full of the most powerful people in the country, but they all looked small and scared. Defense Secretary Rick Barnes was speaking, but his voice sounded far away. "The objects appeared at 800 hours Eastern Time," Barnes said. "They are positioned beyond Neptune's orbit, approximately 2.8 billion miles from Earth. Each vessel is roughly 2 miles long and half a mile wide." President Sullivan had been in office for 3 years. She had dealt with wars, natural disasters, and economic crises. But this was something completely different. This was first contact with an alien civilization, and it did not look friendly. "What are they doing?" she asked. General Crawford stepped forward. "They appear to be scanning, Madam President. Our intelligence suggests they are mapping our planet and our defenses." "How long do we have?" "Unknown, but based on their current position and scanning patterns, we estimate they could reach Earth in 72 hours if they wanted to." "Doctor." Helen Parker sat at the far end of the table. She was Earth's best expert on languages and communication. For the past 15 years, she had been part of a secret government program designed to handle exactly this situation. Now that it was happening, she felt completely unprepared. "Have they tried to communicate with us?" President Sullivan asked. "Not directly," Dr. Parker replied. "But we are picking up their internal communications. They are using a complex signal system that will take time to decode." "How much time?" "Hours, maybe days. Their language is unlike anything we have encountered." In space, far beyond Neptune, Admiral Kithara stood on the bridge of her flagship. The massive vessel was made of a crystal-like material that glowed with inner light. Around her, hundreds of crew members worked at stations that looked more like art than technology. The Admiral was tall and thin, with silver skin that reflected the light from the control panels. Her eyes were large and dark, and they showed no emotion as she studied the readings from the 3rd planet in this system. "Report," she commanded. "The planet has a single dominant species," her science officer replied. "They call themselves humans. Population approximately 8 billion. Technology level is primitive but developing rapidly. Military capabilities? Limited. They have nuclear weapons, but their space-based defenses are minimal. Their largest warships are less than 1% the size of our smallest escort vessel." Admiral Kethera nodded. This was exactly what she had expected. In her 50 years of service to the Zephyrian Empire, she had conquered 43 star systems. Every time it was the same story. The native species would have some advanced technology, but they would lack the unity and determination to use it effectively. "Begin detailed scans of their military installations," she ordered. "I want to know the location of every weapon, every base, every leader. When we attack, I want it to be over quickly." The science officer hesitated. "Admiral, there is something unusual about this species." "Explain." "They appear to be highly aggressive. Their history shows constant warfare, even among their own kind. They have fought hundreds of major conflicts in just the past century." Admiral Kethara smiled. "Good. Aggressive species break faster when they realize they cannot win. Fear is our greatest weapon." Back on Earth, Dr. Parker worked through the night with her team of linguists and computer experts. They had set up their equipment in a secure facility beneath the Pentagon, and the room buzzed with activity. "I think I have something," called out Dr. Frank Davis, one of her best researchers. "Their number system is based on 12, not 10, and they use what appears to be a musical pattern in their communications." Dr. Parker looked at the patterns on her screen. Slowly, pieces of the alien language began to make sense. What she discovered made her blood run cold. "Oh my God," she whispered. "What is it?" asked Dr. Davis. "They are not here to talk. They are here to conquer. This is not first contact. This is preparation for invasion." She grabbed her phone and called General Crawford. "General, we need to evacuate the president. Immediately. These aliens are not friendly, and they are planning to attack very soon." As the night wore on, reports came in from around the world. The alien fleet was scanning major cities, military bases, and industrial centers. They were being methodical and thorough, like a doctor examining a patient before surgery. President Sullivan stood in the Oval Office looking out at the White House lawn. Secret Service agents had already begun moving her to a secure underground location, but she had asked for a few minutes alone first. Tomorrow, she would have to make decisions that would affect the future of humanity. She would have to choose between surrender and a fight that Earth could not possibly win. She thought about her children, her grandchildren, and the 8 billion people who were counting on her to keep them safe. The phone rang. It was General Crawford. "Madam President, Dr. Parker has made a breakthrough. The aliens are following a standard pattern. They have done this before, many times. They arrive, they scan, they demand surrender, and then they attack if the planet refuses. How long do we have?" "Based on their previous conquests, approximately 72 hours from first contact." President Sullivan took a deep breath. "Then we have 72 hours to figure out how to save the human race." Outside, the stars looked the same as they always had. But somewhere out there, an alien fleet was preparing to end human civilization. And Earth had never felt more alone. Captain Roy Stevens sat in the intelligence center deep beneath the Pentagon. Around him, dozens of analysts worked at computer screens, trying to piece together information about the alien fleet. Roy had been studying enemy patterns for 20 years, but he had never dealt with anything like this. "Show me the data from the Henderson Observatory," he told his assistant, Lieutenant Maria Santos. The information appeared on his main screen. For the past 6 hours, the space telescope had been tracking the alien ships. What Roy saw made him feel sick to his stomach. "They are not random," he said quietly. "Look at this pattern." Lieutenant Santos leaned over his shoulder. "What am I looking for, sir?" "The way they move. The way they position themselves. They have done this before." Roy pulled up another screen. "Computer, show me military formations from known battles." The computer began displaying formation patterns from throughout history. Roy watched as the alien fleet movements matched perfectly with classic siege formations used by armies on Earth. "They are treating our entire solar system like a city under siege," Roy realized. "This is not exploration, this is conquest." He picked up his secure phone and called General Crawford. "General, I need to brief you immediately. What we are dealing with is much worse than we thought." 1 hour later, Roy stood in the Situation Room presenting his findings to the President and her Security Council. The room was quiet as he spoke. "The Zephyrian Empire follows a specific pattern," Roy explained. "We have identified this pattern by studying their ship movements and comparing them to historical military tactics. First, they arrive with overwhelming force. Second, they spend 72 hours scanning and mapping the target planet. Third, they demand immediate surrender. Fourth, if surrender is refused, they attack with everything they have." Defense Secretary Barnes leaned forward. "How do you know this pattern?" "Because they have used it before, sir, many times. Our deep space monitors have detected similar energy signatures from at least 12 different star systems over the past 50 years. Each time, after the initial 72-hour period, all communications from those systems stopped completely." President Sullivan felt the weight of the world on her shoulders. Are you saying they have destroyed 12 entire civilizations? Yes, Madam President, and based on the size of their fleet, each of those civilizations was more advanced than us. General. Crawford stood up and walked to the large screen showing Earth's defenses. What are our options? Limited, Roy replied. Our entire space-based military consists of 47 ships. Our largest vessel, the USS Defender, is 800 feet long. Their smallest escort ship is over 2 miles long. We are outgunned by a factor of approximately 300 to 1. The room fell silent. Everyone understood what this meant. Earth's most advanced weapons were like stone tools compared to what the aliens possessed. Dr. Parker entered the room carrying a tablet computer. Her face was pale, and her hands were shaking slightly. I have been monitoring their communications, she said. I have bad news and worse news. Give us the bad news first, President Sullivan said. They are definitely planning to invade. Their communications mention resource extraction, population management, and territorial assignment. They view Earth as valuable real estate that they intend to claim. And the worst news? They have done this 43 times. 43 entire civilizations have been conquered by this empire. And based on their internal communications, none of those civilizations lasted more than 1 week after the invasion began. Meanwhile, in space, Commander Beth Taylor was leading humanity's small reconnaissance fleet on the most dangerous mission in human history. Her ship, the USS Explorer, was only 400 feet long and carried a crew of 30. She was approaching the alien fleet to gather intelligence. Commander, we are detecting massive energy readings from the alien vessels, reported her science officer, Lieutenant Dan Cooper. Their weapons are unlike anything in our database. Beth looked at the readings on her screen. The alien ships were not just large, they were incredibly advanced. Their hull material was unknown, their energy output was enormous, and their weapons could probably destroy a city with a single shot. How close can we get without being detected? She asked. Unknown, Commander. Their sensor technology is far beyond ours. They might already know we are here. Beth made a decision that would affect the rest of her life. Take us closer. We need to know what we are dealing with. As the USS Explorer moved toward the alien fleet, Beth and her crew got their first close look at the Zephyrian ships. They were beautiful and terrifying at the same time. The crystalline hulls reflected light like giant jewels, but Beth could see weapon ports that were larger than her entire ship. Commander, Lieutenant Cooper called out, I am detecting movement. 3 of their ships are changing course. They are heading toward us. Are they attacking? Negative. It appears to be an intercept course, but they are not powering weapons. Beth realized that the aliens were curious about them. This was probably the first time they had encountered organized resistance during their 72-hour scanning period. Send a message to Earth, she ordered. Tell them what we have seen. If we do not make it back, they need to know what they are facing. Back on Earth, President Sullivan received Commander Taylor's report. The news was devastating. The alien ships were not just numerous. They were individually more powerful than anything humanity had ever built. General Crawford gathered his top military advisors for an emergency meeting. The question was simple. Should Earth surrender immediately, to save lives, or should they fight a battle they could not win? If we surrender, said Air Force General Kate Williams, what happens to humanity? Based on the pattern from other conquered worlds, Roy Stevens replied, the population is either enslaved or eliminated. Either way, human civilization ends. And if we fight? Human civilization still ends, but at least we go out fighting. General Crawford looked around the room at his officers. These were people who had dedicated their lives to protecting their country and their planet. Now they were being asked to make an impossible choice. There is a third option, said Marine General Dan Collins. We do not surrender, and we do not fight a conventional battle we cannot win. We do something else. What do you mean? Asked General Crawford. We make them understand that conquering Earth will not be like conquering other worlds. We show them what happens when they try to take something that belongs to us. President Sullivan was informed of the military's recommendation. It was not surrender, and it was not a traditional battle plan. It was something completely different, something that had never been tried before in the history of warfare. "What are you proposing?" she asked General Crawford. "We give them exactly what they expect, Madam President. We follow their pattern. We wait for their surrender demand, and then we give them our answer. Which is? We tell them no, and then we show them why that is a very dangerous thing to ignore." As the 72-hour deadline approached, Dr. Parker continued monitoring alien communications. What she discovered changed everything. The Zephyrian Empire was not just confident, they were completely certain of victory. In their internal communications, they referred to the coming battle as a training exercise for new crew members. This gave President Sullivan an idea. If the aliens were overconfident, maybe that could be used against them. Maybe there was a way to turn their greatest strength into their greatest weakness. "General Crawford," she said, "I want you to prepare for Operation Last Stand. But I also want you to prepare something else. I want you to prepare a message." "What kind of message, Madam President?" "The kind of message that no one in the Zephyrian Empire has ever heard before. The kind of message that will make them think twice about what they are trying to do." As Earth's military prepared for the impossible, the alien fleet continued its methodical scanning. Admiral Kithara was pleased with the progress. In 36 hours, she would demand Earth's surrender. In 48 hours, the conquest would begin, but something was different about this planet. The humans were not behaving like other species. They were not broadcasting surrender messages or trying to negotiate. They were preparing for war. This puzzled Admiral Kithara. Every conquered species had eventually realized that resistance was futile. Yet the humans seemed to be getting ready to fight a battle they could not possibly win. Perhaps, she thought, they simply did not understand what they were facing. Soon, they would learn. The secure communication line crackled to life in the Oval Office at exactly 600 hours. President Amy Sullivan had been awake all night, waiting for this moment. Across from her sat General Crawford, Defense Secretary Barnes, and Dr. Parker. They all knew what was coming. "Madam President," came the voice of Admiral Kithara through the speakers. The alien's voice was translated by Dr. Parker's computers, but it still sounded cold and emotionless. "I am Admiral Kithara of the Zephyrian Empire. You will surrender your planet immediately. You have 1 hour to respond." The transmission ended. The room fell silent. After 72 hours of preparation, the moment had finally arrived. President Sullivan looked around at her advisors. These were the people who would help her make the most important decision in human history. "Are we ready?" she asked. General Crawford nodded. "Operation Last Stand is in position. All military units are prepared. Ambassador Martinez is standing by." President Sullivan had made her choice days ago, but saying it out loud still felt impossible. "Send Ambassador Martinez, tell them we want to talk." Ambassador Tony Martinez had served his country in the most dangerous places on Earth. He had negotiated with terrorists, dictators, and criminals. But as he boarded the civilian transport ship Aurora, he knew this mission was different. He was about to meet beings from another world, beings who had destroyed 43 civilizations. The Aurora was a small passenger ship that had been converted for this special mission. It carried no weapons and transmitted peaceful intentions on all frequencies. As it approached the alien fleet, Martinez could see the massive Zephyrian vessels through the viewports. They were even more impressive up close than in the photographs. "This is Ambassador Martinez of Earth," he broadcast as the Aurora reached the outer edge of the alien formation. "I request permission to come aboard and speak with your commander." The response came quickly. A beam of energy surrounded the Aurora and pulled it toward the largest alien ship. Martinez felt his stomach drop as he realized there was no turning back. In a few minutes, he would be face to face with beings who could destroy his entire planet. Thus, alien ship's docking bay was enormous. The Aurora looked like a toy inside it. As Martinez stepped out of his ship, he saw his first Zephyrian in person. The alien was tall and thin, with silver skin that seemed to glow in the strange light. Its eyes were large and dark, and they showed no emotion as they looked at him. "Follow me," the alien said in perfect English. "The Admiral is waiting." Martinez was led through corridors that looked more like crystal caves than the inside of a spaceship. Everything glowed with soft light and the walls seemed to be alive. He had studied alien contact procedures for years, but nothing had prepared him for this. Admiral Cathera was waiting in what Martinez assumed was the bridge of the ship. She stood in the center of a circular room surrounded by control stations that looked like works of art. When she turned to look at him, Martinez felt like he was being examined by a scientist studying an interesting insect. "You are the representative of Earth," Admiral Cathera said. It was not a question. "Yes," Martinez replied. "I am Ambassador Tony Martinez, speaking for President Sullivan and all the people of Earth. You have come to surrender." Martinez took a deep breath. This was the moment everything depended on. "No, Admiral. I have come to deliver a message." Admiral Cathera tilted her head slightly. In her 50 years of conquest, no species had ever sent a message during surrender negotiations. "What message?" "Leave our solar system now or face the consequences. This is your only warning." For a moment, the bridge was completely silent. Then Admiral Cathera began to laugh. It was a sound like breaking glass, cold and sharp. Around the bridge, other Zephyrian officers joined in the laughter. "You dare to threaten the Zephyrian Empire?" Admiral Cathera asked when the laughter stopped. "Your primitive species cannot even travel between stars, yet you think you can challenge us?" Martinez stood straighter. "We know what you have done to other worlds. We know you think we will be easy to conquer. We are here to tell you that you are wrong." "Wrong?" Admiral Cathera walked closer to Martinez. "We have conquered 43 star systems. We have defeated civilizations with technology far beyond yours. What makes you think your species is different?" "Because we are human," Martinez said simply. "And humans do not surrender." Admiral Cathera studied the small human standing before her. She had heard similar words from other species, but there was something different about this one. He was not begging or offering tribute. He was not afraid. He was delivering a warning as if he actually believed his species could back it up. "Tell me, Ambassador Martinez," she said. "What consequences do you speak of? What can your primitive world do to threaten the might of our empire?" Martinez looked directly into her dark eyes. "You will have to attack us to find out. But I promise you this. When you do, you will discover why every species in this galaxy should fear the day they decided to fight humanity." "Interesting," Admiral Cathera said. "Your species shows more courage than intelligence. Very well. Return to your planet. Tell your leaders they have 6 hours to reconsider their position. If they do not surrender by then, we will demonstrate why resistance is futile." Martinez was escorted back to the Aurora and released. As his small ship flew back toward Earth, he could see the alien fleet beginning to move into attack formation. He had delivered humanity's message, but he wondered if it would make any difference. Back on Earth, Dr. Parker was working frantically with her team to decode more Zephyrian communications. What she discovered in their database made her hands shake as she typed her report. "General Crawford," she called across the secure communication center, "I have found something important. The Zephyrians have detailed records of every species they have conquered." "What kind of records?" General Crawford asked. "Military capabilities, population numbers, resistance patterns. Every conquered species followed the same pattern. They fought for a few days, realized they could not win, and surrendered to save lives. And then what happened?" Dr. Parker's voice was quiet. "The Zephyrians eliminated them anyway. Surrender was never an option. They were all going to die regardless." This information was immediately transmitted to President Sullivan. It confirmed what her military advisors had suspected. There was no peaceful solution to this crisis. The Zephyrians were not interested in coexistence or negotiation. They wanted Earth's resources, and they were willing to commit genocide to get them. "Madam President," General Crawford said over the secure line, "we have confirmation that Ambassador Martinez delivered our message." The alien commander laughed at him. What was her response? 6 hours to surrender or they attack? President Sullivan looked out the window of her underground bunker. Somewhere above, 8 billion people were going about their lives, most of them not knowing that their world was about to end. She thought about her grandchildren, about all the children who would never get to grow up if she made the wrong choice. General, are our forces in position? Yes, Madam President. Operation Last Stand is ready to begin on your command. And the special message we prepared? Ready to broadcast on all frequencies the moment the attack begins. President Sullivan closed her eyes and said a prayer for humanity. When she opened them again, her voice was steady and strong. General Crawford, you have my authorization to begin Operation Last Stand. Show the Zephyrian Empire what happens when they threaten the human race. As the 6-hour deadline approached, something unprecedented began happening across Earth. Instead of panic and chaos, people began coming together. Military bases reported record numbers of volunteers. Factories switched to producing weapons and supplies. Scientists shared their research freely. Ordinary citizens prepared to defend their homes. The Zephyrian Empire was about to learn that conquering humanity would be unlike anything they had ever experienced before. They had faced advanced technology and superior numbers, but they had never faced a species that simply refused to give up. Admiral Kethara watched the countdown timer on her command screen. In 30 minutes, the conquest of Earth would begin. She expected it to be over within a week, just like all the others. She had no idea that she was about to face the most dangerous enemy in the galaxy, a species that had learned to fight not just with weapons, but with something far more powerful. Hope, courage, and the absolute refusal to let evil win. The countdown reached 0 at exactly 1400 hours Eastern Time. Colonel Jake Morrison watched his screens at NORAD as the alien fleet began moving toward Earth. After 78 hours of waiting, the battle for humanity's survival was about to begin. All stations, this is command, Morrison spoke into his headset. The Zephyrian fleet is advancing. Operation Last Stand is now active. May God help us all. Across the planet, military units that had been waiting in hidden positions began to move. Marine General Dan Collins stood with 10,000 volunteers on a hill overlooking Colorado Springs. These men and women knew they were about to fight a battle they could not win, but not one of them had asked to be transferred to safety. Listen up, General Collins called to his troops. In about an hour, alien forces are going to land here. They expect us to run when we see their superior technology. They expect us to surrender when we realize we cannot win. Are we going to do that? No, sir, came the shouted response from 10,000 voices. That's right. We are going to show these aliens what humans do when someone tries to take our home. We are going to fight until we cannot fight anymore. And when we fall, others will take our place. Navy Captain Kate Williams was aboard the orbital defense platform Liberty Station, 200 miles above Earth. Around her, the crew worked at their stations with calm determination. They could see the alien fleet approaching on their screens, and they knew their weapons were no match for the enemy's technology. Captain, called Lieutenant Commander Jim Parker, the alien ships are entering weapons range. All batteries prepare to fire, Captain Williams ordered. We may not be able to stop them, but we are going to make them work for every inch. The first alien ship to reach Earth's orbital defenses was a massive cruiser the size of a small city. Its crystal hull glowed as it powered up its plasma weapons. The ship's commander expected to destroy the human defense platforms with a single volley. Instead, something unexpected happened. Liberty Station opened fire with everything it had. Nuclear missiles, energy weapons, and kinetic projectiles slammed into the alien ship's shields. The shields held, but the alien commander was surprised by the intensity of the attack. Report, Admiral Kethara demanded from her flagship. The humans are resisting with their full military capability, her tactical officer replied. Their weapons are primitive, but they are using them aggressively. Casualties? None yet, but their attack patterns are unusual. They are not trying to preserve their forces. They are attacking as if they do not care about losses. Admiral Kethara frowned. In previous conquests, enemy forces had always tried to minimize casualties once they realized they were outmatched. But the humans seemed to be doing the opposite. They were attacking harder as the battle went on. Air Force Colonel Phil Garcia was coordinating Earth's atmospheric defenses from a bunker beneath Cheyenne Mountain. His fighter squadrons were launching from hidden airfields around the world, and he knew most of them would not be coming back. Blue Squadron, you are cleared. For Attack Run Alpha, he transmitted to a group of F-35 fighters approaching an alien landing craft. Copy that, Control, came the response from Squadron Leader Major Lisa Chen. We are beginning our attack run now. Major Chen led her 12 fighters straight toward the alien ship. The massive vessel was landing in a field outside Denver, and she could see alien troops preparing to disembark. Her missiles would barely scratch the ship's armor, but that was not the point. All fighters, target the landing ramp, she ordered. Make them work for every meter of ground. The human fighters attacked with suicidal bravery. When their missiles were gone, they used their guns. When their guns were empty, some pilots rammed their damaged aircraft into alien positions. The aliens had superior technology, but they had never faced enemies who fought like this. Dr. Helen Parker was monitoring alien communications from her secure facility. What she heard made her realize that something important was happening. The alien messages were changing from confident reports to concerned questions. General Crawford, she called on her secure line, the aliens are not following their usual pattern. What do you mean? The general asked. Their communications show confusion. They expected organized resistance for maybe 6 hours, followed by surrender negotiations. Instead, our forces are fighting harder as the battle continues. Is that good or bad? I think it is good, sir. They are starting to ask questions they have never had to ask before. On the alien flagship, Admiral Cathara was indeed asking questions. Her tactical displays showed something that made no sense according to Zephyrian military doctrine. Human forces were not retreating when faced with superior firepower. Instead, they were concentrating their attacks on the strongest alien positions. Science officer, she called. Analyze human military behavior. Why are they not following standard defeat protocols? Unknown, Admiral, came the reply. Their tactical choices appear to be driven by factors other than survival probability. Explain. They are making military decisions based on principles we do not understand. Logic suggests they should minimize casualties and preserve forces for negotiation. Instead, they are maximizing damage to our forces regardless of cost to themselves. This was something new for Admiral Cathara. In 43 previous conquests, enemy species had eventually chosen survival over resistance. But humans seemed to be choosing resistance over survival. Meanwhile, something else was happening that the aliens did not expect. Reports began coming in from around the Earth of civilian populations supporting the military effort. Factories were working around the clock to produce weapons and supplies. Scientists were sharing research that had been secret for decades. Even children were helping by carrying messages and supplies to soldiers. Marine General Collins received a report that amazed him. General, civilian volunteers are requesting permission to join the fight. We have farmers, teachers, doctors, and students asking for weapons. How many? General Collins asked. Over 2 million so far, sir, and the number is growing. This was unprecedented. In previous Zephyrian conquests, civilian populations had always sought shelter and waited for their governments to negotiate surrender, but humans were doing the opposite. They were volunteering to fight. Admiral Cathara received her first casualty report 6 hours into the battle. Admiral, we have lost 3 escort vessels and suffered damage to 12 others. Human resistance is more intense than projected. Casualties to our ground forces. Significant, Admiral. Human defenders are not retreating from positions even when faced with overwhelming firepower. They are fighting until eliminated, then being replaced by fresh troops. Admiral Cathara studied the tactical displays. The conquest was proceeding, but not according to plan. Her forces were winning every battle, but each victory was costing more than expected, and the humans were not showing any signs of weakening resolve. Open a channel to Earth Command, she ordered. Perhaps they are ready to negotiate now that they have seen our power. President Sullivan received the alien communication in her underground bunker. This is Admiral Cathara. Your forces have fought bravely, but you cannot win. I offer you one final chance to surrender and save the remainder of your population. President Sullivan looked at General Crawford, who was monitoring reports from battlefields around the world. What is our status, General? We are losing, Madam President, but not as fast as the aliens expected. Our forces have exceeded all projections for resistance duration, and something else. Reports from other worlds in the galaxy indicate that our battle is being noticed. Other worlds? Yes, ma'am. Species that were conquered by the Zephyrians are monitoring our transmissions. Some are beginning to show signs of rebellion. President Sullivan smiled for the first time in days. Admiral Cathara, she transmitted, back to the alien fleet. This is President Sullivan. We have considered your offer of surrender. And your response? Our response is the same as it was before. No. We are human beings, and we do not surrender our freedom to anyone, no matter how powerful they think they are. The transmission ended. Admiral Cathara stared at her communication screen in disbelief. No species had ever refused surrender twice, but humans had just done exactly that. Tactical officer, she called. How long until we achieve complete planetary control? At current resistance levels, approximately 4 more days, Admiral. 4 more days. Previous conquests had been completed in less than 1 day. Admiral Cathara was beginning to realize that conquering Earth was going to be unlike anything the Zephyrian Empire had ever experienced. What she did not know was that the battle for Earth was about to trigger something that would shake the foundations of her empire. Across the galaxy, conquered species were watching humanity's fight, and for the first time in decades, they were beginning to remember what it felt like to hope. The battle for Earth had been raging for 6 days and 6 nights. Admiral Cathara stood on the bridge of her flagship, staring at reports that made no sense according to everything she knew about warfare. Her forces were winning every engagement, but the humans simply would not stop fighting. Admiral, her communications officer called urgently. We are receiving priority transmissions from the High Command. Admiral Cathara activated her private communication channel. The voice that came through belonged to Supreme Commander Zethran, leader of the entire Zephyrian Empire. Admiral Cathara, explain your situation, the Supreme Commander ordered. You have been engaged with a primitive world for 6 days. Previous conquests required less than 24 hours. Supreme Commander, the humans are unlike any species we have encountered. They continue fighting even when defeat is certain. Their military doctrine appears to be based on principles we do not understand. Casualties? Admiral Cathara hesitated before answering. We have lost 47 vessels and approximately 30,000 ground troops. Human losses are 10 times higher, but they continue to replace fallen units with fresh forces. There was silence on the communication channel. In the entire history of the Zephyrian Empire, no single planet had ever inflicted such losses during conquest, Admiral. The Supreme Commander's voice was cold. You will complete this conquest immediately. We are receiving reports of unrest on conquered worlds. Some populations are citing the human resistance as inspiration for rebellion. This was the news that Admiral Cathara had been dreading. The human resistance was not just affecting Earth, it was affecting the entire Empire. On Earth, Colonel Morrison was coordinating the defense from his command bunker. The reports coming in were devastating but also inspiring. Human forces had been pushed back on every front, but they were still fighting. Cities had fallen, but the people in those cities had not given up. Colonel, Sergeant Hayes called from her station. We are receiving a transmission from the resistance fighters in New York. Put it through, Morrison ordered. Command. This is Captain Joe Wilson in Manhattan. The aliens control the city, but we still control the subways and the sewers. We have 10,000 fighters underground, and we are hitting their supply lines every day. Similar reports were coming in from around the world. London, Tokyo, Sydney, Moscow. Every major city that had fallen was still fighting from underground. The aliens controlled the surface, but humans controlled everything below ground. General Collins was leading a group of survivors through the mountains of Colorado. His original force of 10,000 had been reduced to 3,000, but somehow, they were still causing problems for the alien occupation forces. General, his aide reported, intelligence says the aliens are pulling troops from occupation duty to hunt for us. Good, General Collins replied. Every alien soldier hunting us is one less soldier controlling civilians. That is exactly what we want. Dr. Parker was still monitoring alien communications from her hidden facility. What she discovered on the 7th day of fighting made her call President Sullivan immediately. Madam President, the alien empire is in crisis. I have intercepted communications from 17 different star systems. Conquered populations are rising in rebellion. They are using the same tactics we are using here on Earth. President Sullivan could hardly believe what she was hearing. Are you saying our resistance is causing rebellions across their empire? Yes, ma'am. The Zephyrians conquered those worlds by convincing them that resistance was hopeless. But our fight has shown them that resistance is possible. Even if we cannot win, we can make conquest so expensive that it weakens the entire empire. This was the moment President Sullivan realized that Earth's battle was about more than just saving humanity. It was about showing the galaxy that tyranny could be resisted. Meanwhile, Admiral Kithara was receiving the worst news of her career. Her tactical officer approached with a datapad containing intelligence reports from across the Empire. Admiral, we have confirmation of active rebellions on 17 worlds. 3 colonial governors have requested immediate military assistance. The rebellion on Kepler 442b has recaptured their capital city. How is this possible? Admiral Kithara demanded. The rebellions are using tactics learned from monitoring human resistance. They are fighting from underground. They are targeting supply lines instead of military positions. They are refusing to surrender even when faced with superior force. Admiral Kithara realized that the conquest of Earth had created a problem far bigger than one planet. The humans had done something that no other species had managed to do. They had shown the galaxy how to fight back. Open a channel to the human command, she ordered. President Sullivan received the transmission in her bunker. The alien admiral appeared on her screen, but she looked different than before. She looked tired and concerned. President Sullivan, I offer you terms for immediate cessation of hostilities. President Sullivan was surprised. Terms? You mean surrender? No. I mean a treaty. Your species has demonstrated that conquest of your world would require resources that the Empire cannot spare. We are prepared to recognize Earth as an independent world in exchange for an end to your resistance. President Sullivan looked at her advisors. General Crawford was shaking his head in amazement. After 7 days of impossible fighting, the aliens were offering to leave. What guarantees do we have that you will honor such a treaty? President Sullivan asked. You have already provided your own guarantee, Admiral Kithara replied. Your resistance has shown the galaxy that the Zephyrian Empire can be fought. If we violate a treaty with you, every conquered world will know that peaceful coexistence is impossible. The rebellions will spread. Colonel Morrison was monitoring the negotiation from NORAD. He could hardly believe what he was hearing. The most powerful military force in the galaxy was offering to negotiate with Earth as an equal. Madam President, he called on the secure line. Our deep space sensors show the alien fleet beginning to withdraw from the inner solar system. President Sullivan made her decision. Admiral Kithara, Earth accepts your proposal, but understand this. If any member of your empire threatens our world again, they will face the same response you have faced here. Understood, Admiral Kithara replied. The Sol system will be marked as restricted territory. No Zephyrian vessel will enter your space without permission. 2 hours later, Dr. Parker intercepted a transmission from Admiral Kithara to her fleet commanders. The message was brief but historic. Mark this system as restricted territory. The species here is problematic for imperial expansion. Conquest costs exceed acceptable limits. As the alien fleet departed Earth's solar system, something unprecedented happened. Across the galaxy, conquered worlds received the same message that Admiral Kithara had sent. For the first time in the history of the Zephyrian Empire, a planet had fought them to a standstill. President Sullivan addressed the world from the Oval Office. My fellow humans, today we have achieved something that no other species in our galaxy has accomplished. We have stood up to tyranny and forced it to back down. We did not win because we had better weapons or superior technology. We won because we refused to give up. General Crawford was reading the final casualty reports. Human losses had been enormous, nearly 2 million military and civilian casualties, but they had saved their world and inspired a galaxy. "What happens now?" he asked President Sullivan. "Now we rebuild," she replied, "and we prepare, because every tyrant in the galaxy now knows that if they want to conquer Earth, they will have to pay a price they cannot afford." Colonel Morrison watched the last alien ship disappear on his sensors. For the first time in a week, Earth's skies belonged to humanity again. On distant worlds across the galaxy, the rebellions continued. The Zephyrian Empire found itself fighting dozens of small wars instead of conducting easy conquests. Their expansion had stopped, and their control was weakening. Admiral Kithara filed her final report on the Earth incident. Recommend immediate policy review regarding conquest of aggressive species. Human resistance model poses existential threat to imperial expansion if adopted by other populations. The report would lead to changes that would affect the entire galaxy. The age of easy conquest was over. The age of resistance had begun, and it had all started with a single species that refused to surrender, even when facing impossible odds. Earth remained free, not because humanity had won a war, but because they had shown the universe what happens when ordinary people decide that some things are worth fighting for, no matter what the cost.